Welcome to the Fantasy Coaching Game Plan presented by Miller Lite. My name is Jimmy Rooney. I'm here to introduce the Miller Lite Fantasy Coaching Contest in the Pro Fantasy Coaching Game mobile app. Pro FCG is a mobile app that enables all fans to connect a game board to live football games, guess each upcoming play call in real time, and score points to rise up the leaderboards and win great prizes. This season, Miller Lite is offering prizes to the top scoring players during select Steelers games at partner venues in the Pittsburgh area. Download and register for the Pro FCG app and connect to a Steelers game in the app to enter. Participate for a chance to win tickets to Steelers versus Chiefs or Steelers versus Bengals at Acrisure Stadium at the end of the season. The more you play, the more chances you get to win. The game is entirely free to play, and there's no purchase necessary to participate in the contest. Find full contest and gameplay details in the show notes below. I'm joined today by Steelers and NFL analyst Matt Williamson to analyze the Steelers and Browns coaching tendencies and put together a game plan for how to make the best picks in the Pro Fantasy Coaching Game app this weekend. Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Psyched to do this. We were just talking off the air. It's a little bit of an odd show since these teams met so recently. I mean, by when we're recording this, it was less than 2 weeks ago, and we didn't do a show for the Browns. So I guess some of this is new, but I'm sure most of our viewers watched that game. And second half was, such a snow game too. That also put a wrinkle into things.
Yeah, that's sort of what we were talking about is how do you, what do you think about this game, big picture? We'll start there.
Well, one thing I think that really works to the Steelers' advantage, which was the opposite the first time they met, was pull back the curtain. We're recording this on Tuesday evening.
Mm-hmm.
The Browns probably got to Cleveland at like 7 a.m. Tuesday morning after a Monday night game that far away. And people don't think about that, but it really messes with you through the course of the week. Now, for their coaching staff, at least they're very familiar with the Steelers. They game planned for the Steelers 2 weeks ago. So that's not as terrible, but that was a physical long game in high altitude. And if Tuesday's basically wasted because you have to get some kind of sleep, that really puts the Browns behind the 8 ball because they have to go on the road again.
Yeah, so the rest advantage is flipped this time. And I remember
going
into that Thursday game, you talked a lot about, the Steelers coming off of a Ravens game and Tomlin
Absolutely.
coming off of a long week versus a short week and how significant that's been in his history.
Absolutely. So with a rest, I mean, it's not a long week for the Steelers, but it is a rest advantage against a kind of beat up team that, doesn't have as much to play for. But, the Browns are going to bring their best against Steelers. And anyone who watched that Monday night game knows that Jameis Winston's entertaining. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, diving into some of their tendencies here, you've been able to send me some of this information about it. Looks like the Browns are pretty pass heavy and Steelers are
very,
more 50-50. What can you tell us about, we usually start Steelers offense, Browns defense. We'll start Steelers offense. What can you tell us about how they're going to try to attack the Browns this week?
Well, I mean, just judging off the Thursday game, they have to do a better job of getting Myles Garrett blocked. And there's no question about that. So I don't know that the Darnell Washingtons of the world or the running backs will catch as many passes because I think they're going to be involved in protection more than more than usual, just dealing with Garrett. I mean, he's a special player that wreaked havoc against the Steelers. And Dan Moore's very familiar with him, but he's going to need help without question. But they've gotten Freiermuth more involved. They threw to the running backs an awful lot this past week. And frankly, they were way more pass heavy last week than usual, the Steelers. I mean, the first half in particular, they came out throwing against the Bengals defense that's frankly bad against the run and pass. It wasn't like it's a huge pass funnel. They chose to throw. Now, I think part of that's because Joe Burrow's on the other side. They knew they weren't going to win this game, scoring 17 points and grinding it out, so but the Browns are sort of similar. Like Jameis isn't as good as Burrow, of course, and their offense isn't as good, but they throw like crazy. The Browns are super aggressive, and people don't think about these things, but Russell Wilson's only started 6 games for this franchise. So him and Arthur Smith and his receivers, they're still getting to know each other. I mean, he threw the ball to 10 different guys, had catches last week. I think he's just starting to really get familiar with his teammates, the timing in game. Sure, he's practiced, but and it's not that they ever distrusted him, but I do think that they trust Wilson now more than ever. And maybe they'll be a little more pass heavy going forward, as they gear up for the playoffs. And my hunch is nobody's told me this, but it's just how the league works for big time veteran quarterbacks like Russ is he probably has. I mean, if you watch that game last week against the Bengals, he checked out of so many plays and switched protections and moved the back from the left to the right and was in much more command of the offense. So my hunch is he probably has ultimate freedom at the line by now to get out of a bad running play and check to a pass or vice versa. And over the last 5 years or so, the Steelers just haven't had that. They ran so many bad plays. So I know, for the app, I would think that you're going to see a decrease in negative plays for the Steelers just because Wilson's so good at the line of scrimmage. Last week, they were more pass happy than usual. Maybe that's a one off, but I think you're going to see a small uptick. They're always going to be a run first team, though. And
Yeah.
their tendencies, as you'll show here, are pretty darn strong.
Hmm. And we've been talking about this for weeks now. It seems like all situations that the Steelers are always run happy, run heavy,
Hmm.
but sort of like you're saying, it sounds like, if it is true that as you said, Russell is able to, make more of his own calls at the line, that, knowing quarterbacks, that seems like that's going to lead to more passing.
I would
Um,
think.
mhm. And
Especially if
then,
teams are going to stack the line of scrimmage and, he's not going to just run into heavy boxes.
yeah,
And you know that he wants to throw the football. When in doubt, maybe throw the football as opposed to hand it off. I think that adds up. And again, I think a big key for your users here are get out of negative plays. I mean, if this is destined to run up into the strength of the defense, he's going to get him out of those negative plays before the ball's even snapped.
right. So, if you're watching at home and you're seeing like there's a crowd around the line of scrimmage and it seems like it makes no sense to run into where all the
Hmm.
defenders are. In the past, they might have stuck with the run play, but now they're more likely to check into the passing play. And you can kind of use, as you're trying to pick along at home, use some of that, I don't know, common sense more when you're trying to pick run or pass.
Yeah, maybe even act like you're the quarterback, in that, boy, this is a heavy box. I better get out of the run. Check to a pass as late as I possibly can on the app.
Hmm.
So I definitely think that is in play. Um, yeah, I mean, the offense is progressing.
Right. And then, yeah, this is where the specific matchup with the Browns is interesting. You sort of mentioned this is, we can see sort of here all of Russ's passes last week. And like you said, there was a lot of these kind of, everybody who watched the game saw a million throws to the running backs right over the
Yeah.
middle. And that seemed like a Bengals thing. Whereas this week, you're saying a lot of those plays might be taken away by people helping block Garrett. Um,
Yes, Wilson, especially going back to his Denver days, led the league in passes to running backs. So that's not going away, and they're both very capable receivers, as is Patterson. But frankly, that got extreme last week. I don't know how Cincinnati didn't adjust to one of these running backs running down 3, 4, 5 yards in the middle of the field, turning around wide open, and then run after the catch. Like
mhm.
most defensive coordinators aren't going to allow that to happen over and over and over.
Yeah, right. So where do you think some of these targets will move to this coming week? More of the outside checkdowns, running backs, more downfield.
Yeah, I also think Fryermuth. I know Fryermuth always kills the Bengals,
Hmm.
and but even over the last couple of weeks, I think more so than maybe any receiver on the team, Wilson's getting more and more comfortable with Fryermuth, and he's playing more snaps. He's running more routes than he did early in the season. So I think he might start to emerge as the number two pass catcher behind Pickens. Um, but there are some strong tendencies, and I know you showed some of them, but
Hmm.
they are run heavy in all situations, but especially on first downs. They're very heavy on late downs as well, but first downs in particular. They're extremely heavy run team, and I don't think this is an accident. When they convert it, we talked about this last time we got together, but when they convert a first down through the air, they almost automatically get right back to the run. Like, that was nice. Let's get back to the
Mhm.
run. You know what I mean? And they're also a heavy run team on second and medium. I think that's something to work at. And it kind of bothers me to some degree, I mean, because I feel like when they get to second and medium, second and long, their whole goal is to get to third and short. And frankly, the league, you need to start getting more first downs on first and second down. And they did against the Bengals. So I think maybe they're breaking a little bit of tendencies, but still for an NFL team, they're very heavy, second and medium, second and long run team, which makes me a little crazy, but it also lands body blows early in the game and wears teams down and pays off a little bit more as the game goes on. And then one that you might not think is third and short. You would think they'd just bring in Fields or bang away with Najee. They tend to take some shots there. Third and
Mhm.
short isn't as much of a slam dunk run play as you might imagine for a run heavy team for the Steelers.
Right, and we saw that in particular against the Browns in the first matchup. They did bring in Fields, but that was the time they had him. I think 2 times they had him throw it deep, and
Yeah.
one was a penalty, but, um,
Hmm.
so it's definitely something to look for in this one.
They'll take
Um,
shots there because they're not afraid to go for it on fourth either. I mean, if it's third and one, that's third and two. That's often a shot play situation for them because they may come back on fourth and go for it.
right, so overall in the Steelers offense, we're still always looking at more runs than passes,
Yeah.
especially in those neutral early down situations. Um, 3rd and short, we're seeing more potential to take shots deeper downfield. Um, this matchup obviously has happened before, but it was kind of unique and hard to take away from because of how much snow came in the second
Hmm.
half. Is there anything else specific to playing the Browns that you're looking for in this game?
Um, their defense to me is still highly respectable, and
Mm,
I think that it's true for both teams that when you analyze this game, you almost have to throw away when Fields was a starter, when Watson was a starter. Like
yeah,
season long stats for the Browns don't do them justice because they were so bad on offense with Watson and with Winston. They've been mediocre to good. I mean, it's volatile, but it's mediocre to good. And I frankly think that the Browns defense got kind of tired of carrying the team, that there's just a personality thing, showed up of, man, this offense with Watson is so hopeless. Yeah, I'm giving my all, but it's not as important to me as it should be. And now, even though they're out of things, they're playing with more pride, I would say.
right, absolutely. So in terms of, we sort of know when to pick run and when to pick pass in terms of some of these distances. You mentioned that, you know, um, Russ Wilson likes to take shots downfield or throw to the running backs a lot. On the run plays, you mentioned his ability to start audibling now might lead to just they're running into better looks, maybe
Yeah, yeah.
getting more yards, more of these 4 to 6 yard plays. Obviously, on defense, you mentioned Miles Garrett has shown that he can get pressure against the Steelers, so there might be chances to pick sacks in this game.
Hmm.
Is there anything else that sort of stands out to you on where kind of when people are
Um,
picking? Yeah.
I'm sure Garrett's going to bring his A game because he's very conscious of Watt on the other side,
Mhm.
obviously. And it didn't show up that much on Thursday night, but other than him, they don't get a lot of pressure for the year. And their second best guy is Darius Smith. He's now in Detroit. So other than Garrett, you're not getting as much pressure as you might imagine. However, I don't think people around here talk about it enough. I mean, the Steelers' pass protection has been pretty suspect. I mean, their pressure rate allowed is quite high, and that needs to get better.
Right. And so, yeah, that's something that as Steelers fans can hope to get better. But if you're trying to win one of these contests, then there's always chances to score points by picking a sack.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In games
And
like
Wilson's always taken sacks in his career. He's not
yeah,
afraid to eat one and he'll hold the ball.
right. So especially in these obvious passing situations, the 3rd and longs, there's the Steelers will take shots downfield, but they'll also take some pressure and some sacks. So
Hmm.
great. So looking at the other side of the field now, you've talked a little bit about Jameis. Looks like the Browns are pretty pass heavy in a lot of situations as
Very.
well. What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, they're not the Browns team you remember with Chubb behind a great
Mhm.
offensive line by any stretch. They really are hurting with ball carriers. They run the ball very poorly. I hope that Chubb gets back to what he used to be, but he's far from it now. He averages just 3 yards a carry, really, really low. Ford was the leading rusher on Monday night, but he's far from special. Then he's out there a lot because he's kind of a third down type back. He's a good receiver. So they throw and throw and throw. And I don't know if Tillman, the wide receiver, is going to play or not in this game. But either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, Jerry Judy's really flourished with Winston as his quarterback. Elijah Moore's a high quality number 3. Tillman's a guy they like a lot, which is why they traded Amari Cooper to open up a spot for him. Njoku gets peppered with targets. I mean, he got targeted 17 times on Monday night, which is just insane. So they throw almost no matter what.
Mhm.
Their protection's not great. I mean, I expect in a big way, because what let me down most from a Steeler perspective on the Thursday night game was I thought they would dominate with their defensive front. And they frankly didn't. And in the second half, that's excusable because of the snow. But they remember. They know that they were sort of embarrassed on Thursday night without being as good as Cam Hayward and Watt and those guys can be. And now you get Highsmith back. You might get Montravis Adams back just for depth too. So I would be shocked if Winston doesn't get sacked a lot more. And the Steelers only had 1 tackle for loss in that game against Cleveland. I'm sure that spikes dramatically too.
Great. So yeah, again, the Browns 70% of the time they pass. It looks like even first and second and long, they're passing way more than the rest of the league. And
Yeah,
then if we're looking at sort of the yardages to look for, we think the Steelers might have an advantage in terms of getting more tackle for losses, more sacks,
100%.
more negative plays in this one.
And certainly interceptions. I mean,
And
anyone
right.
that knows anything about Winston he throws the ball the other team. You just have to
Mhm.
catch it. I mean, so Minka hasn't had his pick, but boy, he seems due. I mean, I know I say it every week, but still, I mean, I would expect a lot of splash plays by the Steeler D's, tackles for loss, takeaways, sacks, all those things. And you kind of mentioned it, but there are some trends with this team that I think are worth noting. Down and distance stuff.
Mhm.
They do play very fast with Winston. You'll see no huddle. They want to run a lot of plays, so they do not slow play things. They'll not go really deep into the play clock all that often. Part of
Mhm.
it's because they throw a lot, so in incompletion you get more plays, but they do run a lot of plays. They play fast. Um, However, and this might just be a snow thing, they were more run heavy against the Steelers than they were basically in any game with Winston behind center. Now, I'm sure because of the snow in the second half that influenced it, but my hunch is they also wanted to at least test the Steeler run defense and didn't do a lot, but I don't know what to take away from that. They're also, for a pass heavy team, they're more run heavy on late downs than you might think. I mean, third and
Mhm.
twos, they're
Mhm.
just happy to get the first, or fourth downs. So keep an eye on that. Late downs are more run heavy than you think, but very heavy pass on first downs and early downs in general, but especially first. Very heavy run team on third and short, as I mentioned too. I mean, the Steelers take more shots on third and short than you'd think. The Browns are happy just to get the first on third and short. So even though they're an aggressive team, keep that in mind. And they're especially really, really heavy in second and long situations. Unlike the Steelers, they throw it. They don't even
Mhm.
hide it.
Yeah. Great. So just a quick note for players here. The first thing you talked about was there might be a lot of chances in this game based on the way Jameis can play erratically, the way that the Steelers defense might be a good matchup or more motivated on the defensive line this week. All of those, quarterback sack, tackle for a loss, turnover picks in this game are bundled at the bottom of the board. So if
I'd
you're
hit that
seeing,
heavy. Yeah.
if the Steelers defense, if you're seeing them get pressure, forcing wild throws, sacks, you can make those picks all at the bottom of the board, run or pass. Um, and then another thing you said is if it's a third down, it sounds like the Browns run or pass, they're going for the sticks. They're not going for the splash play.
Yeah.
So if
Especially
it's
third and short. Yeah.
third and short, we're looking at picking the yardage that matches up with kind of what the down and distance is.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Exactly.
Great. Um, is there anything else that you want to highlight about the Browns? We have, Jameis's. You mentioned they were sort of run heavy against the Steelers with who knows how much that was snow or not.
Yeah.
Last night he threw for 58 times all over the field. It looks like.
Right, right. I mean, it's
So,
what they do. It's their path to victory is Winston's hot and throw into a good group of receivers. They're not going to win by shortening the game and grinding it out like they used to. I mean, they're just not built that way anymore, and
yeah,
also, I know that there are some special teams things here. They've had their issues with kickers. I mean, there's been a lot of missed kicks in Browns games in general. Now, I'm not suggesting Bosworth's going to start shanking things left and right, but when they go at the kick field goals, I wouldn't expect it to be great. I also think it's worth noting that the Steelers' punt coverage team is about the best in the league. They're not allowing long punt returns at all, too, so I wouldn't count on that either.
great. Yep. So yeah, Steelers special teams. It seems like there's something every week. It used to be all good. There's been some blocks in there recently, but there's always more chances to score some points, picking missed field goals, blocks, big returns. Even you can score points with the Steelers picking no return on punts, things like that.
Sure seems like there's something eventful on special teams in every Steeler game, good or bad,
Absolutely.
mostly good.
Yeah. Great. Are there any last keys that we want to highlight here?
Can't think of any.
Yeah.
Just to kind of sum it up, it was a crazy stat I saw this morning about that Monday night game. Everyone knows Winston threw for a ton of yards, but if you add his passing yards up with the interception return yards that he also created, it's the most in NFL history. I mean, there's almost 700 yards happened in that game on Winston throws, good and bad.
Right.
It's
So,
just he's a roller coaster.
and again on the game board, we're trying to pick the extremes. The bottom of
Yeah,
the game
yeah.
board's the defensive splash, the top of the game board's the offensive splash, and Jameis has a lot of both. So
He's perfect for that. Splash and good and bad for sure.
Yep. Great. Okay. Well, that's a good thing to end on, I guess. So Matt, thank you for joining and thanks for all the great insights. Where can listeners find more of your work?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Williamson NFL. I host a bunch of podcasts, A Drive on Steelers.com, Peacock and Williamson. I'm not hard to find. Thanks.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Remember to use all this expertise from Matt Williamson to win your next Miller Lite fantasy coaching contest and the Pro Fantasy Coaching Game app. Thanks again to Matt Williamson for joining. Use his expert advice to win prizes at the next Miller Lite Fantasy Coaching Contest. Download and register for the Pro FCG app and connect to a Steelers game in the app to enter. Participate for a chance to win tickets to Steelers versus Chiefs or Steelers versus Bengals at Acrisure Stadium in week 17 and 18. The more you play, the more chances you get to win. Join live contests and win exclusive prizes at Coupe de Ville, Walter's Barbecue, Lot 17, The Clubhouse, Rochester Inn, Twin Peaks, Mulligan's Sports Bar and Grill, and Monaco's Bar and Grill on select game days. The game is entirely free to play, and there's no purchase necessary to participate in the contest. Thank you for listening, and may the best coach win.